Hello everybody and welcome to the last video of 2023. The past 12 or 13 months have been kind of crazy for the channel. We went from I think 9 to 31,000 subscribers and millions of views. But the big thing here is not the numbers, is that we're building a community that I think and hope that will help everyone out there, no matter their level, their geography, their economic status. They can come in here and learn something useful, hopefully. And in keeping with that, for this last video I picked maybe not a fancy subject, but a useful one. And it's all about the often forgotten minor 7 flat 5 chord, sometimes called half-diminished or semi-diminished. And it's a close relative to last week's chord, the magic chord. And if you haven't watched that video, I suggest you do. I'll link it above and below. It's a very useful tool to have. This chord is a bit different because it is diatonic. Diatonic means that when we harmonize a major scale, we do find this chord in our regular 7th chords. And this chord is the last chord of the key. So if we're in C major, the 7th chord, the one built on the note B, will be a B minor 7 flat 5. The idea here is that we start from a diminished triad. A diminished triad is root, minor 3rd, and diminished 5th, and we add a minor 7th. In the key of C major, we don't want any sharps or flats, and if we start from the 7th chord B, we find the minor 3rd D, the diminished 5th F, and the flat 7 or minor 7th A. So you see, we're fulfilling the need of only having natural notes. So this is a diatonic chord, as we said. So what does it sound like? Well, it sounds like a diminished chord, so it's kind of weird, but at the same time, the A, the flat 7, really rounds it up a little bit. Okay, so if we listen to only a B diminished triad, it's a bit more angular, right? It's really not that great, but when we add the A, it gets rounded up a little bit. And the reason is that we finally have a perfect 5th, even though we don't have it where we wanted it, which is the root and the 5th, but we have it between the 3rd and the 7th. This might be too much for some of you, too much theory, and that's fine too, because you don't need any of that to start using it. But before we get to that, let me give you 3 fingerings for this chord in the key of C, and I'm going to give you one with the root on the 6th, one on the 5th, and one on the 4th string. So for the first one, we start on the 8th fret of the 6th string. This is the C. Then we skip the 5th string, and then we play on the 4th string the B flat, which is the minor 7th, then the minor 3rd, E flat, and finally on the 7th fret of the 2nd string, we have the diminished 5th, the G flat. Sounds a bit weird, I know, but it's all about the context, so let's check it out later. Now let's move on to the 5th string, and we have just a simple alternation of 3 and 4. We go 3 on the 5th, 4 on the 4th, 3 on the 3rd, and 4 on the 2nd string, and it goes like this. I'm sure a lot of you know this position already. And finally, on the 4th string, we have a C on the 10th fret, and we just play that note, and then a little bar on the 11th fret for the remaining 3 strings. Just like that. So I'm going to share with you 2 uses for this chord. One is diatonic and one is non-diatonic. For the diatonic one, which means it's part of the harmonization of a major scale, is to use it as a substitute for the 5 chord. You all know that the 5 chord in a major key is a very strong part of cadences, because the 5 chord really wants to go down to the root, like this. G7 to C. Here or maybe here. Right, it's a very strong resolution. But what if I want a different sound? We kind of discussed this a little bit last week with the magic chord video, but today we're going to use the minor 7 flat 5. And it's extremely simple. We go to any major key, in this case C major, and we listen to the sound of the 5 going to the 1. And now instead of playing the 5, we try with the 7 chord, the B, in its minor 7 flat 5 version. So it would be B minor 7 flat 5 to 1, C. You can hear it sounds different from a G7, but it still has the same feel. The reason is that if you look at both chords, G7 is made up of G, B, D, and F, and B minor 7 flat 5 is made up of B, D, F, and A. So there's only one note difference, the G and the A. Now the G has a little bit of a pull towards the root when we go like this. This ascending fourth movement is part of the cadence, but we kind of lose that, and instead of find this A to G, which instead of being a fourth up is a whole step down. Again, maybe it's too much theory for you, but if you are familiar with it, this will be very handy to know. So the major second downwards still has a little bit of pull, not as much, of course, as the ascending fourth, but it also makes the resolution and the cadence a bit softer, a bit more sophisticated maybe, instead of a bit more understated. So it's certainly a good tool to have. Now for the non-diatonic use of this chord, which means this will bring us outside the key, so we'll have notes that are not part of C major in this case, we're going to try to use it as a substitute for minor seventh chords. Some of you know that in the key of C major, the D, the E, and the A are minor seventh chords, and this of course works in all keys. Chords 2, 3, and 6 are always minor seventh. Well, we can try using a minor 7 flat 5 instead of a minor 7. Let's try it with the D. So we are in D minor 7 to C. It's a good sound. Maybe to C major 7th, doesn't matter. So we're going 2 to 1. Now let's try with a D minor 7 flat 5 instead. The only difference, of course, is this note, the A, now becomes A flat. It's very cool. It creates a little bit more tension, and the reason is that this A here was moving from the A to the G by a whole step, whereas now, because it's an A flat, it's a half step. And this tiny difference makes the sound feel more urgent. So we go minor 7 flat 5 on the D to C. Okay, we can also use it in the other direction. We could go D minor 7 flat 5 to E minor 7 to D minor 7 to C. Another thing I like to do with this chord is to alternate between the diatonic minor 7 and the minor 7 flat 5 of the same root, kind of like what we did with the diminished 7th chord last week. So if I'm in D minor 7, and over that I can just improvise. Now, one thing you want to remember is that as soon as you move away from the diatonic, so from what is part of a key into non-diatonic, so that has notes that are outside of it, then you have to make sure that you know what you're doing on top of it. So if I'm insisting on the D minor 7 flat 5, which has an A flat, but my melody is all about the A, then it will sound bad. I will need to either adjust or ignore and avoid the offending note. And there you have it, something cool to chew on into 2024. Again, thank you so much for everything, for your kindness, your support, your comments, and the great community you've helped me build. If you'd like to help the channel, there's links below, and I'll see you very, very soon.